Hey, this is driver 88. So it's no secret that the new C63 4-cylinder is a sales flop. And it has got me thinking, given that the prices hit now $208,000 before options, what other sort of models could you look at if you still want to get a relatively modern AMG with a decent sound, all-wheel drive like the current model, and even larger size? Well, a very, very favorite car of mine is the W213 E63S. I've enjoyed it for a number of drives and been able to take it through northern Italy years ago, and it got me thinking how much they're trading for. Well, they're actually sitting at about 20% less than a new C63 today. So are they a good option? So we've decided we're going to revisit these E63S today, and there's a number of models sitting at Dutton 1 to check out. I'm going to take my favorite example of the 5 for a drive, so please enjoy. This is the button you'll want to be pressing. I love the slight little bit of twist that you get through the chassis when you rev that V8. It just adds to the proper AMG experience. So welcome to the interior of the E63 S. Now, I really love the interior of this generation of W213. One of the reasons why is we have this dual landscape screens, which I think is just the right amount of screens. I don't think we need anything here in the center console. Very highly visible, they don't reflect that much, and they're easy to see while driving. The next thing I like about this interior is not just the fact that we have leather absolutely everywhere, is that I am sitting in the middle seat, and even though there's a transmission tunnel here, my head is not hitting the roof of the dual panoramic sunroofs. These sports seats are really good for my body shape, at least. We have good side bolstering, sporty enough but not too hard. The steering wheel, we had 3 different steering wheel generations in this E-Class, and this is my favorite. The newer one is a little bit too sort of plasticky and digital for my liking. This one I enjoy. It's a good mixture of buttons and digital. And the first generation steering wheel, I'm not a big fan of. I think it's aged not that well. Another thing I really like about this interior is that we have a lack of gloss black. Have you noticed that? We have this sort of timber black interior sort of look without all that gloss black, which just scratches easily and collects dust. Now, if we're sitting in the back, we do have some amenities here, your charge points, your 12-volt air conditioning, and it's really quite comfortable. Really quite comfortable. It's a good size, not too big, not too small. If I move to the side here, I'm 5'11", my knees don't hit the seat, and the person in front's got plenty of space. So whether you're sitting in the back or the front, that's the great thing about the S-Class, you're going to be in comfort. The C-Class, I think, is a little bit squishy in the back. And just to add to the luxurious nature of the E63, we have an analog IWC clock, as well as, of course, the Burmeister sound system. Through the doors, and the cabin just absolutely looking delicious in aluminium. Now, how's the turning circle? It's quite decent for a large all-wheel drive car. Now, what about the brakes? I'm not a big fan of the brake feel in this car, but I haven't pushed it really hard today. I pushed it pretty hard in Italy and remember them being decent. Speaking of the brakes, you can of course get carbon ceramics as an option, and there are some other models at Dutton One which have those carbon ceramic brakes. God knows what the replacement cost is for those discs, etc. I mean, it's up to you. I wouldn't say that they're a necessity for most people, unless say you're in Germany and you're regularly hitting 250 kilometers per hour, which is the maximum speed of this car, but you can get it unrestricted with a tune, which you will get to quite easily 300, I'm sure. Then you might want to have the carbon ceramic brakes. Now, I know very few people who want more power than this. I just love the way it just delivers power instantly as you want it. So satisfying to drive. And in the corners, no, it's not an M2, but it's quite responsive to your inputs. I mean, it's large, but I would not call it a boat. Now, there's 5 different examples here, mixing from different years and kilometers. This example I particularly like because you've got a 2018 model which really has aged quite well in the 6 years that it has existed. We've got like 30,000 kilometers. You can buy an extended warranty on these. If you want 5 years, I think it's about $9,000. Of course, you haven't started haggling yet, so you could put that into your equation. I think that these are really a good buy. I would buy one of these used over a new C63 4-cylinder. That's even more expensive than this. I would buy one of these over the C63 205 as well. It's just my opinion. I prefer the interior. I prefer having larger space. I prefer the looks. And I love having all-wheel drive, so you're not just smoking up the tires. Because if you modify one of these, if you decide to tune one and throw away the whole warranty situation, you are talking about absolutely enormous performance with small mods, and you'll be able to actually put the power to the ground. If you want to just smoke up the rears and turn it into a drift machine, you can do that too. It's the best of both worlds. That's why this is one of my very most favorite AMGs of the modern era. So let's talk power. We're talking about the 4-litre twin-turbo V8, putting out 603 horsepower, 850 newton meters. Essentially, all that torque comes from idle. You've got a really nice exhaust note with not too many pops and bangs, because I don't think it's worth really mucking around with the exhaust on this car. It sounds just as good stock. 0 to 100 turns up in 3.4 seconds, but in good conditions with warm tires and decent tires, I think you can even beat that. We're talking about low 11s for a large sedan, which you're driving in comfort. Let's take it for a drive right now. So whilst I've been driving, I've been inclined to put my suspension always in comfort and pretty much everything else in Sport Plus. And I think I remember my long drives in this car in Italy and throughout Europe much more fondly, due to the fact that the roads were a lot smoother. Here in Australia, especially Victoria, which is pothole heaven, there's a lot of sort of vibration and stuff coming through the cabin, but that's really about my only gripe, because it's kind of happily taken over by that lovely V8. Now, when you do want to take control of the gearbox, put it into manual mode, geez. I mean, the torque on offer instantly is so impressive. This is not as, I think, satisfying to drive as some dual clutches that I've had with other brands, but oh, good work. Just got cut off by a Holden Commodore. Not the real Holden Commodore, but the new one from Opel. Now, you might have heard rumors that the C63 is potentially coming back in a V8, because people have absolutely cracked it at Mercedes and thrown rotten fruit at them for getting rid of the V8 in the C-Class. So there may be a CLE 63 with a V8. However, with the E63, the replacement of this car, it's going to look like that it's going to be a straight six hybrid. So we're not going to get the V8. So this will be the last, I guess, mid-size sedan of this shape and this style with this lovely V8 character. So sure, this is an AMG, but you do want to have a decent amount of comfort because it is a large sedan. And I would say that this guy does not take undulations and potholes and bumps very well, even in the comfiest setting. And it might be a little bit too aggressive for most people. Speaking of aggressive, I love these bucket seats, but a lot of people may find the side bolstering a bit too hard, and you may want to look at a car with the standard comfort seats. I don't think you'll have too many issues finding those, but I love these buckets. When you do want to put things into more aggressive modes, I mean, as I've said many times before, the great thing about these hot V8s is the huge amount of torque on offer from the get-go. You've always got plenty of power, in this case 600 horsepower, like it's nothing. I've driven these cars a number of times. I've driven at least a couple of thousand kilometers through Europe in one of these and absolutely loved it. Yeah, it's just one of my favorite modern AMGs, as I've said, for so many reasons. The steering wheel, I might prefer this sort of feel in my hands rather than the BMW ones, which are really fat. What else can I say? The visibility is quite decent too. Yeah, it's just a good all-round car. Now, one thing again that this E63 does well is that you've got a slight bit of body roll given that this is a larger car, but it settles down really nicely. And then you can take long sweepers with incredibly high speeds. And I like the way it changes direction. We don't have a ton of steering feel up the front with the 265s, but I think it's definitely passable for modern standards. You've got huge 295 rear tires, which you're definitely going to need, particularly in mixed conditions. If you want to let them loose, as I've said before, you definitely can do that quite easily. One thing I'm not a big fan of, although it's not terrible, this 9-speed Mercedes-Benz gearbox. Generally, you put it up against the latest ZF 8-speed, I think they're called 8 HP gearboxes in most other brands these days, like BMW and Land Rover, etc. I think the ZF is a little bit smoother than this, and that helps to just give you an even more refined power delivery, but it's definitely not terrible. But I think the ZF, compared to this one, is just slightly faster and more intuitive with its power delivery.